So I'm here to talk about my company, Telnexus, and what we're doing to grow our business. So I just want to start off and tell you a little bit about our story and about our experiences. I want to, basically explain how we are trying to build the next generation of over-the-top service and to make the next cloud-based phone company. And my personal story is that I, love tech, like all you guys. Well, actually, I wanted to ask, how many people out there are like me, or like a small reseller trying to make it here with the cluster? Just a handful of us? And the rest of us are building our own clusters, primarily? And, okay. Well, there's not a lot of us in here, but I'm going to tell the story about how I think that we can build a cloud-based system to basically attack the incumbents. And I've been loving communications since, for a long time. I was a FidoNet sysop in the 80s. Came here to the Bay Area, went to Genentech. The whole time I've been a database guy and thinking about databases and how to build systems. Then I got a chance to get into the industry. I went to Oracle and learned a lot about cloud tech. I worked on the web application server there and had a chance to be with Mark Benioff and went off and helped him think about Salesforce and was part of that initial thing. So the whole cloud thing's been in my head for a long time. And after the 2000 bust, though, a lot of us kind of had to pick up the pieces. And I did that by becoming the local computer guy in Berkeley, California. And it was then that I started to kind of figure out what was going on with telecom. And when I looked at telecom, I saw that as a trusted IT service provider, I could easily recommend, sell, install, and make my customers happy with new telecom services. And at the same time, I began to really see how telecom service was being perceived as just billing, delivery, taking their money and not delivering any service. So that's when I began to realize that we had to have a service component in everything that we did. And that was why the locals trusted me. That they would say, oh, okay, Vern, you can put in the telecom as long as you're here to make sure that it works good. I'm fine, I don't care what carrier you put in. And that was good, so I learned about the trust factor. Next, I learned how much our main competition, RingCentral, 8x8, those guys, how much they really don't care about the small enterprises and how much churn there's going on there and how, and why all that stuff was failing I found out, was because of bad networking. So that was, the beginning of how I was beginning to transform my managed service provider into a ITSP. And another thing that got me excited, I think all of us should be excited about this, is the FCC, according to the Form 499 data, says that there's only about 17% of all business lines have been converted to VoIP. So there's about 80% of businesses out there have not converted. So there's a big market that these people do not want to give to the incumbents, the small customers, the small users. So there are a ton of unconverted VoIP users out there, and that's our market. Excuse me. So the problem was, how do I run a business on this stuff? How do I put it all together? And those backgrounds are awesome, but they're a little distracting. So here essentially are all the things you need to do. And we've seen this actually presented a few times today and yesterday about all the elements we have to have that work together. So we need our marketing, we need our sales. Those usually work together. We've got order processing. That's huge. How do you take an order and convert it into cash? And that's the quote to cash thing I'm talking about here. The next thing is provisioning. How do we automatically provision? How do we do taxation? How do we do accounting? And finally, I think a lot of the things that all of us do to contribute to the value of a telecom now is to provide like IT service management or some other service that goes along with the telecom delivery. So I think customers are really looking for that. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to go look and see how this is done in the industry. And I immediately got confused because these terms came in. BSS and OSS. What is that? What the heck is that stuff? It's just as old-fashioned as this picture I got going on here. It's basically, I think it's a distinction in software systems that we don't have to live with anymore, because everybody in this room thinks about software, I think, the same way. We think about it more in terms of modules, where you have communication going on between the modules with XML or REST or SOAP or something, or some sort of communication bus like RabbitMQ or something like that, putting all these elements together. And this division here, I think I've got a laser pointer here. Is it working? Yes. So these two divisions here, the operation support systems and the business support systems, you imagine an AT&T implementation of this during the 30s or the 40s or the 50s, and these would literally be separate buildings, separate big office buildings filled with people who were responsible for the operations, another group responsible for the billing. And that led to a phenomenon which in IT we call siloization. So the information becomes lodged into silos, and you need these well-defined interfaces to kind of put them together. So we don't have to do that. You know, if we're building a cloud system for the future, we don't need to think about it that way. We can think about it this way, which is basically a design for what's called an enterprise resource planning system. So ERP. ERP is, it's a weird word. First of all, it's one of those acronyms that really doesn't represent what it means, because ERP is basically an accounting and management and inventory system that's evolved from manufacturing enterprises, like car manufacturers. So, but this type of architecture can be used to implement a complete automation of a business environment. And as you can see here, they have all of the major aspects covered. I got this from ATG, who's a major application server manufacturer. They were one of our competitors back in the Oracle days. And as you can see, this is really nothing specific to telecom, but it is certainly a framework that can help us understand how to create an integrated database system that does everything for us. Now, the wonderful thing about Kazoo, of course, is that it's an API-based architecture that can fit into this type of system. And I certainly am not the only one thinking about cloud-based telecom enterprises, and there's plenty of others. And I did some research, and this one is the best example I found. You can look at it right now. You probably want to go to this website, netcracker.com, if you really want to understand what's going on here. But let me just kind of go through this stack diagram, because I think it's actually kind of puts together a lot of the talks and a lot of the things that have been going on here at KazooCon, and kind of shows an architecture maybe for the telecom of the future that maybe we should be shooting for. So down here, this green layer, it's fascinating because if you recall our discussion yesterday with from Orange and how they're talking about network virtualization and SDN and other technologies, That's what all of this is down here. So this is like the core machines, the core architectures, all implemented on a virtualized basis. On top of that, we have the actual software systems that deliver services to end users. And I was trying to figure out where Kazoo would fit in this architecture here. And I'm pretty sure it's just this little box right here is what Kazoo would be. But essentially, though, it shows that it's got an API that would then talk to this layer here. And we have other things in here such as security, policy management, and so forth. And then on top of that, here we have what is considered to be the old OSS part of this architecture. And that's where you have your service management, network management, how you can control your cluster, how you could fire up new machines and so forth. Over here, they talk about service orchestration, such as using Puppet or Chef or one of those guys to be able to deploy new services down here. And then up here, they talk about converged billing, which is bringing all these services together into one billing environment to have a nice billing package or a billing presentation that you can deliver to your end users, to your customers. And then on top of that, these are all the interfaces that your customers have to your environment. So here we have CRM, we have sales, we have project management, partner management, vendor interfaces, so you would have like an intranet or a web interface, so it would be going to that area here. So, and then of course, when you're generating all kinds of data in here, you can add on big data here at the end so that you can be looking at all the data that you're generating and put it all together into a cohesive environment. So that's a nice ideal. And it is kind of the thing that we're shooting for here. So you need, though, do they have accounting in here? I guess they don't. So it's not that complete. Because if you look back here at my traditional application server engine here, we have, essentially financial management. So we have to have a general ledger and all that kind of stuff. So as a CEO, operations is awesome, but I got to know if we're making money and how we're making money, and to get as much of a real-time pulse on that. And to me, that's really what an ERP system is all about. That's what quote to cash means, is that if I can be a sales guy, create a quote out of a standard catalog system, deliver that quote to the end user, press a button, have them DocuSign it, then press another button, and then have that generate all kinds of a real order, have that order automatically provision services, have that order automatically generate inventory transactions, have that order create a service ticket for deployment. That is, the type of automation we're looking for. And ultimately to have that order generate the invoice and to have that sent to the customer, and then to have the billing and the collections happen all automatically. That's quote to cash. That is, if you hear this term, quote to cash, to me, it's really the most modern way of referring to ERP. Because you need these comprehensive accounting systems in order for quote to cash to work. So, getting to the end here, and we have a love-hate affair going on with all the stuff out there that I'm dealing with. So things that we love the 2600 hertz cloud platform. And I'll just digress for 1 minute here and tell you why I think 2600 hertz platform is the best. If somebody says, well, why are you better than BroadSoft? I go, BroadSoft? They're hosted. They don't have a real cloud. I said, well, why are you better than RingCentral? Have you ever heard of their pods and how they put those together and how they scale out their system? That's not a real cloud. And by real cloud, to me, the way I translate that into customer feelings is that we have a real 5 nines architecture. We are really up all the time because of the cluster, because of the cloud, because everything is all organized together in such a way, especially now with the DNS failover and all of these neat features, that against Call Manager, against Cisco, a Call Manager, against BroadSoft, against all the major ITSPs, I think that we truly do have the best cluster available, best telephony cluster out there. And it's API-based, so we love that. It gives us the ability to plug into that complex architecture I was explaining there. Next, I love database systems, flexible database systems, and cloud-based database systems. So everything there needs to be together, essentially in one database system, where you have access to the metadata that describes all of your information, and you have it all together so you can create projections and views and detailed looks at your data without having to bring in additional systems. And I also mean that the database system has to be cloud-based. In other words, I don't want to run an Oracle server, I don't want to run a MySQL server, I don't want to run anything like that. I want that all to be run for me in the cloud. And the other thing I like is to think about these things in conjunction with other thoughts that are going out there in the field. In other words, I love for people to tell me what they're doing, and I want to learn from that and use those lessons. So what do I hate? Waiting to get paid. I mean, quote to cash. That's the whole idea, to increase our collections, our speed of collections. I hate trying to use a billing system that's tied to the old ILEC ways of doing things, because they're all about call detail records, individual calls, mediation, ratings. I'm more interested in per-seat pricing, and I'm more interested in helping my users think about the way of buying telephony technology as being more like how you buy a cloud seat from Salesforce or from Dropbox or Google Apps or something like that. Another thing I hate, even though I'm here talking about the cloud and how awesome it is, cloud sprawl is a real problem. So you don't want to keep adding services. You really have to think about where you're going to invest and how you're going to put things together. And finally, putting things all together in a manual way, obviously, something that I hate badly. So what have I learned? I've learned that anything but true quote to cash is unsatisfying. If I can generate a transaction, if I can generate a quote, and somehow that doesn't flow through to the invoice automatically, that to me is unsatisfying. That has to happen. I don't think anybody in this room would be happy with looking at the commercial billing systems that are out there today, because they're so tied to the ILEC conventions, and we really cannot adopt them to our new cloud-based conventions. Users are ready for this seat-based pricing. They want to see telecom billing simplified as much as possible. And the other conclusion is, I think if you're out there looking to integrate BSS and OSS systems into your operations, you might be well to kind of step back a little bit and realize that these distinctions are somewhat arbitrary and old-fashioned, tied to a 100-years-old way of doing things. And finally, the platform matters. So what type of cloud platform you pick, what type of telephony platform you pick, it all matters. And it has to be API-based and cloud-based for it to be effective. Now, I just wanted to say that I presented my vision of how to integrate my ITSP, and it's a vision on how we're moving forward. And I think other people have got other visions, probably much simpler than this, and I think they're just as valid. So, I think we're all trying to figure this out together right now, and we're not quite there yet, because we're trying to build a telecom system for the new over-the-top world that's different and can grow faster and more effectively than the old traditional ways. So that is it for my presentation today.